Okay, panelists, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm going to place this water right here. All right, so if I could just like to do some quick introductions. As the panelists approached me, they said, so are we going one question at a time, or can we speak across all three? And I had at least 3 votes for speaking across all 3 right out of the gate, and then we can work with the observations that they've made. So that's the format that we'll use, if that's all right with everybody. Okay, and before I do introductions, let's see, I think, let's see, if it's okay, Randy, I'm going to start with you, go that direction, and then come back this way. Okay, just so you know you'll be first out of the blocks there. All right, so let's do some quick introductions, and we'll get right into the discussion. So to my immediate left, we have Dr. M.R. Seetharam. He's the president, the Swami Vivekananda. Did I get that? Okay, yes, youth movement. Thank you very much. Further left, Dr. Shyam R. Asolekar, thank you. Professor and former head of the Center for Environmental Science and Engineering at the India Institute of Technology, Bombay. Next, Randy Curtis is the Senior Policy Advisor at the Nature Conservancy. Next, Niyati Sareen, she's the General Manager, CSR, for the Hindustan Construction Company. And finally, Felix Ockborn, Environmental Sustainability Program Development at H&M. So, again, our focus here, the key lens, is on the third of the 3 water thematic areas, wastewater and water quality. So if we can maintain our focus there, that will be very, very helpful, particularly to those that are here to learn. And I think you've all had a chance to look across the 3 questions, so I don't need to repeat those. So, Randy, can I ask that you start? You have no choice.
Thank you. I think we heard earlier presentation about the MDGs. I know they're not over yet, still 3 more years, but I think there seems to be a consensus that they did not sufficiently address environmental services and natural resource management in a cross-cutting way. Respect for nature is great, but it really doesn't go far enough if we're going to be attempting to address what is a commonly used, increasingly used term nowadays, natural infrastructure that needs to be integrated across all water and development goals. Environmental NGOs, historically, at least my own, have not done a very good job of linking natural resource management and ecosystem services to human well-being. We need to do a much better job of that, and the SDGs can help mainstream that. We've got wetlands, forests, mangroves, and coral reefs, grasslands. They provide flood control, pollution control, materials, storm buffer services, pollination services. These are services that the poor disproportionately depend on, and they need to make sure. We need to make sure that these services are integrated. I'll just say give one anecdote, and then pass the mic. Recently, a commission created after Hurricane Sandy by the governor of New York came up with recommendations for $40 billion of repair costs. A heavy emphasis was placed in the report on natural infrastructure, on natural capital, on the restoration of some of the natural buffer areas and the watershed services related to water quality. I think that's helping to point the way to where we need to go. Are we going to come back to corporate?
No, actually, the idea was to have you swing through each of the 3, and then we'll use those data points for some further conversation.
Quickly, watershed management goals. I think maybe the best way to approach indicators are through watershed management goals. I like some of the previous comments. Business role, focus heavily on data and research, best practices, modeling best practices, and collective action. Some examples today we heard of the Alliance for Water Stewardship, of which I'm on the board. the 5 by 20 program that was discussed, 5 million new jobs by 2020 in watershed restoration and other water-related areas. Nestle's 2030 Water Resources Group. My own organization focuses on water funds in Latin America and Africa. We're working on 32 at the present. These are financial mechanisms that all stakeholders can get engaged in, where the beneficiaries, chief beneficiaries of water services, water utility companies, brewers, hydropower, big agricultural associations can voluntarily commit funding that goes to watershed restoration. And the Great Rivers Partnership, which is an example of public-private partnership with corporations and governments from 7 countries focusing on 8 of the largest rivers in the world as a learning platform to exchange lessons learned in real time.
Great. Randy, thank you. We move Niyati, please. Thank you.
Thank you. The warm-up exercise this morning was very interesting because when you said how many from the government, and this is in India, and there was not a single person, and 60% of we don't have water, and there was no government here in one of the biggest conversations with all the stakeholders on water. So this just shows that what is priority. So when you talk about goals, in India, water is a social good. I don't know if it being a social good is going to help us anymore. I think it needs to change into an economic good. In my company, we've been working with some other companies, with the Water Resource Group that Philippe from Nestle talked about, and we've been starting to do this road shows with the various state governments to create awareness of how important it is for us to look at water. And the National Water Policy has just been drafted and has just been it's going to be a law or whatever soon, and it has finally taken into account that yes, it has to be treated as an economic good. Only then will it give it importance. We have archaic rules and laws. You talked about how in India the farmers are given subsidy for power to run their water pumps. And why do that? You use that subsidy to do drip irrigation or something like that. Because water is not given the importance that it is, that's how it's been treated. So, the reason I wanted to bring this about was that in my own country, water is not treated the way it is supposed to be treated. And, we're talking about all these fancy terms and all these various institutions, and the basic awareness that water is so important and it's not going to be there forever is not understood. So for me, it is that basic where I want to start with. And with respect to corporates, everybody here is the largest corporate, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. In my own industry, I work in a construction company. We don't own a facility. We create facilities, we construct facilities, we are in that area, we build an infrastructure, we are in that area for 3 to 5 years, and then we move on. How do we deal with water in our own organization? So there are 70,000 construction companies in our country, from the small guy who builds a house to companies like us. There is no sense of water awareness in any of these companies. So when we talk about corporate engagement, it's always the large corporates. What happens to the small and medium scale? Even our own supply chain, we're trying hard to work with them, but Tata Steel is our supply chain, but that's a really large supply chain, so that's a different issue. But we have 30,000 other subcontractors that are part of our supply chain. So how do you engage with them? How do you create awareness with them so that they can also start something to do with water? It could just be a basic start of being a water-conscious company, and then move on to be a water-neutral company, and then to a water-positive company. So when people here talk about being water-neutral and water-positive, I'm completely amazed because, we don't even have the water consciousness in our own country. We looked at the, Bastian in the morning showed that fancy McKinsey cost curve. Now, if you look at a cost curve, and if you look at the low-hanging fruits in that, to really put those fruits, to really look at that and to work on that is really, it creates the largest impact. For example, the loss of water in city municipalities is so high. That's one of the low-hanging fruits. You just look at that, and if companies can just, construction companies like us can speak to the municipalities and tell them that we'll help you, to tap that leakages, and there's a lot of saving that happens. I mean, small things like that. Jain irrigation, Dr. Kulkarni is here. He'll tell you how many stories, small stories. So what I'm trying to say here is that in a country like India, which has got such a massive problem of water, there are just pockets of stories and pockets of knowledge. And if that could be reciprocated, I think we'd be able to do a lot of work from the cost curve. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was collective action. Yes, there are lots of organizations here. We have the UNGC local network. We have the TERI, BCSD water. We have FICCI. We have CII, the Water Research Group India, which Philippe talked about, and Nestle is trying to now work in areas with farmers in Karnataka. We've been in various workshops where Bastian has been there, and the Water Research Group people have been there. And the farmers, one of the farmers comes up and says that, you're talking about me using a lot of water. Why don't you tell me what kind of crop I should grow? Maybe I'm growing the wrong crop in the wrong area. So it's what I'm trying to say is that the baseline questions, if they are answered, I think we can scale up much higher. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you.
Good job.
That's the first panelist that's received applause, by the way. So I take it at any break, there'll be a lot of people talking to you. Terrific. So Felix, let's see if we can get you even broader applause.
Exactly, no pressure on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
I would like to say from H&M, and bringing it to the business perspective of an apparel brand with a global supply chain. First of all, I was very happy to hear from Philip from Nestle that wastewater quality and water quality has been added into the consultation process regarding having a goal on it. So I would like to add to what many other people have said, that yes, I think we should have a goal, and yes, I think wastewater and water quality should be part of it. Why? Well, when we've looked at our value chain and the water impacts, we see that there are major problems with water quality in many areas. And when we're looking at sort of wastewater and water quality, I think wastewater is an issue when it comes to, well, what does that wastewater do to the water quality of the rivers that receive it? And we need a goal that can address both these issues so that businesses can understand what are the levels that can be discharged and what is the impact on the rivers, both from an ecological as well as a social perspective. So when we're asking how should it be framed, this goal, well, I think I would say exactly what Philip said. Again, it needs to become operational. You need to make it operational so that businesses, the role of business is to both sort of clean up your in-house operations, so that you know what requirements you have, but then, such as H&M, engage with all these suppliers that we source from, as well as with the other industries in the same river basins, in order to have something that we can create a standard around. Only then are we able to sort of talk about the best practices, the business incentives, and also engage other stakeholders and governments in can we ensure these standards throughout the river basin. Coming back to our company, the way we've looked at it is echoing what a colleague from WWF said about the strategy on knowing your impacts and sort of starting to work internally, but then moving towards working with others. And I think many businesses have different water impacts, but you need to follow a similar way of knowing which water impacts you should address, and then look who you should address those water impacts with. I think these goals also need to align with national goals or more local goals, or make it possible to align, because only then can we actually create incentives on a local level. Implementation, how do we get to that? Well, as I mentioned, I think it's very important for each industry to sort of translate to what it means to them. In the apparel industry, I had a discussion with Heather from Nike during one of the breaks, and we said, well, I think it's 8 years ago now, we did create a standard for wastewater quality and try to sort of address that in the industry. Every industry needs to do that and be able to understand, okay, which are the different parts of the industry that has wastewater, and how can you address that? But then you need to come together and make sure that those standards are implemented across the board, and that not only do our suppliers able to meet those standards, we also need to make it possible for the other textile factories in the same river basins to meet those standards. So we will also hear, I think, later today a great incentive to bring companies together in that discussion with the Water Action Hub. So I think there are those type of mechanisms that can actually get people together for collective action and raise the standards.
Mm-hmm. Felix, thank you. Let's see. If I can turn to Dr. Seetharam, may I turn to you next? Thank you.
So as suggested, I think I'll go the question sequence wise.
Mm-hmm.
The first issue is whether there should be a goal at all related to water, and there's a resounding yes. Perhaps I also feel the morning exercise of the range of representation here showed up that there is not much representation from the health sector, health, pharma, diagnostic sector, and perhaps I'm the only medical professional present in the group today. So from that context as well, water and water quality is of extremely great concern, and therefore it's all the more important that in the subsequent agenda for development goals, water should get a very central position. Not just that, we need to look at how we project water and the environment concerns that we have. As I was going through the preparatory notes for this discussion and sitting through today's deliberations, my mind went back to a declaration that was adopted in 1974, the Cocoyoc Declaration. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of that. It would be wonderful if all of us go back and read that, because there much of the concerns that we spoke of today and are still continuing to speak of had been mentioned, and the world had been warned about the consequences of disregarding some of the environmental concerns. So it would be good if we get back to that and make sure that we have environment-centric and water-centric representation of all the other development goals as well. Because if the other indicators of development, like the economic criteria, outstrip the environmental concerns, then we are sure going to fall back on development rather than go forward. Perhaps in today's meeting here, with all the leaders of corporate groups represented, the slogan should not just be greater productivity, it should perhaps be more responsible productivity and more ethical productivity, so that we balance the environmental concerns with our own forward movement. Some of the key concerns, some of them had already been mentioned. Most of the times we used to speak of water availability, access. Water quality actually had not been a major issue globally, and certainly not even today in the rural areas. I would say that the current trend of pushing development is a major contributor for disruption of quality of water. A major polluter is actually the industry sector. Major polluter is perhaps the push of the agricultural productivity in terms of use of chemicals and fertilizers. So therefore, we have a greater responsibility to address this as corporate groups. I live in a village, I work in a village, and I see day to day the way the farmers in my area are being affected. And like was just now mentioned by Niyati, the crop selection perhaps needs to be relooked at. We live in a place which is not endowed with great amounts of water, and ragi, a millet, used to be the staple diet in our area. Unfortunately, today most of the farmers are growing cotton, and some of them are moving towards sugarcane because they hear a lot about greater economic returns on these crops. Unfortunately, the nature doesn't cooperate. There is crop failure, and today the farmers are in a situation where they cannot even buy ragi. Earlier they used to produce, sell and be happy. Today they are not. So we need to reconsider these issues. We have the rapid urbanization, changing patterns of life, all these issues that are coming up. So all these have to be taken into consideration. Now, what should this cover? What should our goal, etc., cover? Being specific to wastewater and water quality, I thought we should cover all types of wastewater, the domestic waste that comes out of daily living activities from residential areas, the agricultural waste that comes out with its chemicals and fertilizers, the industrial waste that comes out, and in addition the waste that comes out of commercial establishments, including service areas like hospitals. Now healthcare waste is a major concern that is coming up, and we need to address that as well. So there are other issues that come up in so far as how do we address these issues, but a rough framework, I would say, would have to encompass three major areas. One is how do we protect the water sources. Water sources have to be kept sacrosanct, be it a river, be it a stagnant water body like a lake or a pond. That is the first thing. And as corporates, how do we make sure that we prevent pollution, maybe reducing the pollutant load in the effluents and such other activities. And the third major component of responsibility would be how do we develop technology for treatment and management of a polluted water body, because we have already our activities have already resulted in pollution, and it's our responsibility to clean it up. So in terms of the nature of the role of business in supporting the achievement of goals, how does the business go about it? I think there are again three levels at which the group should look at. One is internal. Every corporate, this issue came up actually in the morning as well, as to how you get the buy-in of all employees. So every corporate group is actually a bunch of individuals. So how do we get their buy-in? So how does each group, each corporate convey this concern to all the employees, and how does it apply the norms and standards to itself to make sure that it does not pollute and mitigates the pollution that it has created. The second is mutual. How do we make sure that the interactions that we have in terms of business, maybe our suppliers, our vendors, whoever it is, how do we make sure that we deal with people who are environmentally conscious? And the third level of responsibility would be social and community level, where we respond to the needs of the community and put in some protective as well as corrective measures to safeguard the interests of the vulnerable groups.
Can I, would it be all right if I jumped to the next presenter? I feel like you covered the first two questions very thoroughly, which is exactly what you asked you to do, but I'm just looking at my watch. All right, great. So again, let's go ahead and jump to Shyam. Yes.
Thank you. I share the platform with the kind of views that have been expressed related to water and wastewater story. Many important things have been said. I do not have much of the international view compared to some of my platform members have, and they have spoken. However, based on my last 30 years of practice in this country and little bit of knowledge on science and technology of water and wastewater treatment, I would like to make 4 clear points here. I would like to take the point expressed by Dr. Bharat Sharma earlier related to that the resource development is important, but more important is to manage the resource further and put it to a gainful use. I am just taking that point further and establish a fact here that in this country, India, the industrial pollution has been taken care of to some extent, especially of the industries that are of large scale and medium scale. However, the small scale industries have not been taken care so far. So that is the leftover story with respect to the industrial pollution. But the large scale industries and medium scale industries, much of the work has been already done, and which is on par with many of the countries internationally. However, the municipalities have not treated their waste at all. And in fact, that is one of the real headaches that we have in our country today, that although the country's rivers or water bodies have been classified as A, B, C, D quality streams, A is only imaginary or only the theoretical, because no water body is of A quality. Much of the water bodies of C and D quality, because they are infested with pathogens which are emerging from disposal of sewage, mostly untreated and sometimes partially treated sewage put into the water bodies. And this is the biggest headache. Dr. Koch's observation earlier about the number of people who do not get safe drinking water in the world, according to him, he was saying 4 billion people, nearly half of the people in the world do not get. Well, the statistics is pretty much same in India also. Half of the Indians do not get safe drinking water to drink, and they do not have access to toilet. So the situation is similar in India. It is really bad, and something has to be done when it comes to the quality of our surface water as well as groundwater, because I would like to reiterate here that there is nothing like a separate surface water story and there is nothing like a separate groundwater story. Both of them are connected with each other, both as environmental systems as well as the use by the community. The third point that I would like to make is that technologies that are practiced today for treatment of water as well as wastewater. And I would like to emphasize here that whatever is my wastewater that I put into river flows 160, 150 kilometers away and downstream catches that water as water resource and puts into water works for drinking water and then gives it to community. So there is no difference between wastewater and drinking water. It is same. Only if you are pumping it through a jack well and putting into drinking water treatment system, you call it as a drinking water resource. And if you are using that water body for disposing of your wastewater, then you call it as a wastewater put into the water resource. But it is same water. And today the real problem is that no water body is fit to be called as resource for drinking water. Our observation is that most of the places we are taking dilute sewage from the water sources and putting into water works and giving half treatment and giving it for distribution, and therefore many communities today are having gastrointestinal diseases, many communities are subjected to hepatitis, and there are countless number of people who are getting having the deaths, infant mortality and the issues related to the health. I am putting in fact more important point, this fact probably is known to many people. I am saying that the technologies that are performed today, and I am saying not only in India but internationally for drinking water, are not going to convert this kind of dilute sewage into the drinking water quality. Believe me, the Mumbai's drinking water treatment plant and New York City's drinking water treatment plant is designed and is by the same company, Binney and Partners. The quality of water at the water works is same, but it gets contaminated over when it goes to 30 kilometer distance. So this is the problem that we have, and we need to address, we need to sort of doctor our technologies, we need to also doctor our sources, and for that a big change in management strategy has to come of our water resources. And the last point that I am trying to make where I am sort of banking upon the argument made by Ms. Niyati Sareen, that let us treat water as endowment. Let us treat water as economic good, not only a public good or a common good. It is not doing anything if we treat it as a common good, because it is only considered as a property, common property for contamination or disposal of our wastewater. Instead, let us make it as endowment, and polluter pays is an accepted principle in Indian governance of environment and ecosystem. But I am going further, I am saying let us also say that user also pays. and that is extremely important. Unless user pays for utilizing the resource, we are not going to be able to really make the rightful use of the resource, and we will never be able to give it in a sustainable manner for the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, another round of applause. That's very good. So we have a few minutes remaining. So I'm going to try to take the bumper sticker approach here. All right, and just quickly try to get some feedback on some of the ideas that I heard the panelists bring out. But the first thing I want to confirm is, in every one of your observations that you made, it seems to me is consistent with the notion that there's a compelling case for a specific focus on wastewater and water quality goals. That the need persists, and there's a compelling case for that focus. Is that right? Have I heard that correctly from everyone? Going once? Absolutely. Okay. All right. So with that as our grounding, the second is it seemed to me there was potentially a framework. If I pull together just a couple of points that were made in terms of where could be the areas of focus for goals in that area, and I'm going to use actually the 1, 2, 3 points that you laid out. You said protect water sources. And let me say that I linked that in part back, Randy, to your observation about natural infrastructure, for example. So protecting that is critical. So that's a key area. The prevention of pollution as a second. Actually, a further link back to natural infrastructure, but also to how operationally you think. And Felix, I think that links back to some of the observations that you made. And then this notion of the treatment and management of already polluted sources, and in part the technology there. So let me again ask, in terms of the observations that you made, are those 3 areas of potential focus, is it your sense that those are consistent with the observations that you made, or would you quickly add or subtract from that? And this you have 15 seconds to answer that question. All right, and there's one more follow-up, and then we'll take a break. So, Randy, can I start with you?
I think
you're 3 seconds into your response.
Protecting sources is key. We're talking about maintenance of ecosystems and the services they provide, and restoration of those systems. That is where I would start and emphasize the most at this point.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Good. Niyati?
I think all 3 are key. But the most important is how do you deal with it. What I think is that if you build local resilience to deal with these things, then these things can be dealt with very well. If you wait for somebody else to deal with it for you, I don't think it will happen very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Great. Felix?
Yeah, I agree with all 3. And I would also like to say, connect to what you said, I think the collaboration between industry and the government in order to sort of find those solutions is key. And that the industry is sitting here and the government is not joining us right now is unfortunate. And I hope in the future that we will have them in the same room for that discussion. Yeah.
Terrific. Good. I'm not going to pose the question to Dr. Seetharam, since you were the one that put that framework out, but I would like your response.
I would just say 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
You must make the consumer pay fair price for drinking water, and you must make the polluter pay fair price for contaminating surface water and groundwater, or taking away groundwater as a resource. Point number 1. Point number 2, rainwater harvesting should be made mandatory. At least 50% water should be caught and put to gainful use. No exception. Anybody who holds land, anybody who holds property must do it. Industry, academia, community, anybody. Number 3, zero liquid discharge, please. Nobody should be allowed to put into river any polluted water. May it be industry, may it be farms, may it be community. Until we do zero liquid discharge, our rivers cannot be protected. 65 professors from 7 IITs put together. Last 18 months we have studied how to write management plan for Ganga River, which supports 400 million people in this country, 2,600 kilometer long river, and 7 states in India. We have come to this conclusion: zero liquid discharge. That's the only way. It looks difficult, sounds difficult. It's quite doable. Technology is available today. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, one more quick one here, and that relates to the corporate role. And here I'm going to pull pretty heavily, Felix, on your observations, but also to some that you made. So you talked about an almost sort of an operational hierarchy or whatever, as you did as well, sort of the cleanup in-house. So making sure that you're focusing and cleaned up in-house. Engaging with suppliers, so looking down that supply chain for opportunities for improvement. And then finally, engaging with others in the watershed, so other industries and other players. And in particular, you mentioned the notion of leadership on standards. And the way I heard that, it could either be the industry itself developing a sort of a self-type policing standard, or working with government so that could happen. The fourth area that I heard in the discussion was as an enabler. Corporates as an enabler within the context of these goals that has technology, technical capacity, data, and other things that can be contributed to make that. So again, just very quickly, as across this panel, some of what I heard is key areas for possible corporate participation. What are your quick thoughts on that? Would you add, subtract? And again, I know this is very quick, but let's go ahead and start here. 15-second answers, and we'll wrap you up.
Yeah, the best thing would be start in-house. There could be a structure for the corporate groups, maybe the CII or FCII or some such platform where there could be a mechanism for incentivization, disincentivization, or something like that, which promotes best practices. And similarly, we heard of water champions, so that sort of a concept can also be promoted. We could also think of drilling down the goals down to the state level or the district level, so that a local context can be set. So the local pollutants can be addressed, the local water body can be protected, so there can be joint action by the corporate, the community, the NGO and the government, so that there can be joint action and some action plan can be delivered.
Terrific. Good. All right, 15 seconds.
50% of the industrial requirement, industry should fulfill by taking reclaimed water from city, adjoining city. So sewage should be recycled. So sewage is the sweetest water that can be recycled very easily compared to industrial wastewater. So take water from city and fulfill your 50% requirement. That will really relieve the pressure on water resources.
Good. Thank you. Randy?
Colombia just launched a new regulation that deals with the mitigation hierarchy. Now, in order to get a license to build any infrastructure that has any kind of impact, especially on water, the corporation has to show that it has avoided all the damage possible, it has minimized all the damage possible, and then and only then are they allowed to do a compensation offset. Corporations helped Colombia design that law with an NGO coalition. That law and the 50-page manual that accompanies it to guide them is now been translated into Chinese, Mongolian, and is also being used in its native Spanish to create new laws in Peru and Ecuador. And I think the engagement of business early in that process and throughout that process was critical to its success.
Mm-hmm. Randy, thank you. Niyati?
You know, we are one of the earliest endorsers of the UNCO water mandate, and I've been part of it from day one. One of the biggest learnings I have is that it is such a structured mandate. It helps you understand what you need to do. I think all other companies that haven't endorsed, please sign up today.
Terrific. Thank you. Felix, last word.
Well, I think, as you mentioned, the sort of the hierarchy of in-house with suppliers and then in the actual watershed. Well, we need to get to the watershed. You cannot stop at one or two, but you may start at one or two, depending on your maturity, but we need to get to that last level in order to sort of get to the protect, prevent, and restore, which we just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Round of applause for our panelists. Thank you all.